are back with part 5 of this week's reading of Genesis chapter 24 to 36 of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life Version, TLV. We have actually covered quite a bit of territory here with chapters 29 through 31. And I want to just recap on that before we move on because there's a lot that has happened here. So chapter 29, 30, and 31 tells of Jacob's time away from his home of origin, and he was gone 20 years before returning. So he left because of hatred between his brother Esau and him, and he had no contact with him during this time at all. Esau was angry with everyone. He went against what his family desired, and he married 2 Canaanite women. And also, Jacob was on the run and separated from his family. So God made a covenant with Jacob through the dream he gave him, and God had a plan. And in these chapters, Jacob meets Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, his uncle, making Laban's daughters his cousin. They were his cousins. He was in the land of Syria, and Jacob falls in love with Rachel. Rachel is a shepherdess. She's keeping her father's sheep. So Jacob told Rachel who he was, and he went to her to the house of her father. And as you know, Laban tricked Jacob. He worked for 7 years, and when he thought he was marrying Rachel, he ended up marrying Leah. So he kind of got tricked too, just like he tricked Esau out of his birthright and out of his blessing. So he actually got a little bit of payback there, in a way. So when 7 years had passed, he was given Leah, even though he was supposed to be marrying Rachel. But as it was customary, the firstborn daughter was to be married first. But that was never told to him, or he might not have agreed to stay and work for Laban. And Laban wanted to be blessed by what he did and by him working for him. So he had free labor for 7 years from him. So he worked another 7 years, and then he was given Rachel. Now both of them had handmaids. Zilpah was Leah's, and Bilhah was Rachel's. So what happened is, we're talking about there's 12 sons that are actually born. 6 of them are from Leah, and I'm going to go over them at the very end of this. 6 of them are from Leah. At this point, I don't think Benjamin is quite born yet. We actually Rachel has Joseph, and then each of the handmaids have 2 sons. So that's 11 so far. So that's where we are with this, and they are now fleeing Laban. Oh, also there's a daughter Dinah too, with Leah. So they actually had fled Laban because Laban was accusing Jacob of stealing, and that really wasn't happening. And in the process of fleeing, Rachel steals Laban's gods, the idols and images that were in his home. And they Laban meets up with them as they're heading back to Canaan. And what happens is Jacob puts a curse on Rachel by saying, "The one who is caught with your gods, your false idols, will not live." And Rachel actually had taken them, but she never told Jacob that she took them. So how we ended here is Laban and Jacob make an agreement not to harm each other. They didn't trust each other, but to stay away from each other, and that each of them would leave one another alone and they would be in peace. So that is a quick recap of what we have done, and we're going to move now into chapter 32. And early in the morning, Laban got up, kissed his grandchildren and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban left and returned to his place. While Jacob left on his way, the angel of God met him. Then Jacob said when he saw them, "This is God's camp," and he named them Mahanaim, which is Mahanaim. So the next we're going to move into Parashat Vayishlach, and this is where Jacob prepares to meet Esau. He hasn't seen him for 20 years, so he doesn't know what to expect. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau to the land of Seir, Seir, the field of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, This is what you should say to my lord, to Esau. This is what your servant Jacob said. I've been staying with Laban, and have lingered until now. Now I've come to possess oxen and donkeys, flocks, male servants and female servants. I send word to tell my lord in order to find favor in your eyes. The messenger returned to Jacob, saying, We went to your brother, to Esau, and he's also coming out to meet you, and 400 men with him. So Jacob became extremely afraid and distressed. He divided the people with him along the flocks and herds and camels in two camps, for he thought, if Esau comes to one camp and strikes it, the camp that's left will escape. Because he didn't know what to expect. I mean, he's coming with 400 men. He hasn't seen them for 20 years, and when he left, Esau was wanting to kill him as soon as Isaac would be dead. Um, so this is what he's coming back to, thinking, it might not be so safe to come back here after all. So then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Adonai, who said to me, Return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good with you. I am unworthy of all the proofs of mercy and of all the dependability that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed over this Jordan, and now I've become two camps. Deliver me, please, from my brother's hand, from Esau's hand, for I'm afraid of him that he'll come and strike me, the mothers with the children. You yourself said, I will most certainly do good with you, and will make your seed like the sand of the sea that cannot be counted because of its abundance. So he stayed overnight there. Then from all that had come into his possession he took an offering for Esau his brother: 200 female goats, 20 billy goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the hands of his servants, each herd by itself, and he said to his servants, Pass over before me, and put a gap between each of the herds. Then he commanded the first one, saying, When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do all these before you belong? Then you are to say to your servant, to Jacob, It's an offering sent to my lord, to Esau, and look, he's also behind us. And he also commanded the second one, the third one, and all those who were going behind the flock, saying, Say the name exact I'm sorry, say the same exact thing to Esau when you find him. Then you are to say, Look, your servant Jacob is also behind us. For he thought, Let me appease him with the offering that goes ahead of me, and afterwards see his face. Perhaps he'll lift up my face. So the offering passed over ahead of him while he spent the night in the camp. Then he got up that night and took his two wives, his two female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. The second part of this is Jacob wrestles. Actually, this is the third part. Jacob wrestles with God. So Jacob remained all by himself. Then a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not overcome him, he struck the socket of his hip. So he dislocated the socket of Jacob's hip when he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the dawn has broken. But he said, I won't let you go unless you bless me. Then he said to him, What is your name? Jacob, he said. Then he said, Your name will no longer be Jacob, but rather Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and you have overcome. Then Jacob asked and said, Please tell me your name. But he said, What's this? You are asking my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life has been spared. Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed by Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why the children of Israel do not eat the tendon of the hip socket to this very day, because he struck the socket of Jacob's thigh on the tendon of the hip. So Jacob wouldn't let him go until he got his blessing, and he did get his blessing, but he also walked with a limp for the rest of his life after that experience. Chapter 33. Jacob meets Esau. Then Jacob glanced up and saw, behold, there was Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants. He put the female servants and their children first, then Leah and her children behind them, then Rachel and Joseph behind them. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. His eyes glanced up, and he saw the women and the children, and said, Who are these with you? The children to whom God has graciously given your servant, he said. Then the female servants approached, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah also approached along with her children, and they bowed down. And finally, Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. What do you mean by this whole caravan that I've met? So he said, To find favor in your eyes, my lord. But Esau said, I have plenty. Oh, my brother, do keep all that belongs to you. Yet Jacob said, No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, then you will take my offering from my hand. For this is the reason I've seen your face. It is like seeing the face of God, and you've accepted me. Please take my blessing that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me, because I have everything. So he kept urging him until he accepted. Then he said, Let's journey and be on our way, and I'll go ahead of you. He continued, My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that the flocks and the cattle in my care are nursing. So if they are pushed too hard, just one day all the flocks would die. Please let my lord pass on ahead of your servant, and I'll move on further gradually at a pace suited to the livestock that are before me, and at a pace suited to the children, until I come to my lord in Seir. Then Asa said, Please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, What's this? Let me find favor in my Lord's sight. So on that day Esau returned on his way to Seir, but Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built a house for himself, and for his livestock he made booths. That is the reason that place is called Sukkot, Sukkot. So Jacob arrived in Shalom in peace to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and camped right in front of the city. He purchased a portion of field there where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. There he set up an altar and called it El, is Israel's God, El. So in chapter 33, we actually see a little bit of reconciliation between Jacob and Esau. Jacob offered Esau livestock. He actually called him Lord. Now, if you remember what the blessing was, until the yoke is broke off the neck, um, actually, this is what we're witnessing, what the blessing of Isaac was. So Jacob told him he found grace in his sight, that if he found grace in his sight, he saw God face to face, was pleased, and he insisted that Esau take his blessing. So Esau did. And then Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built a house and booths for the cattle and called the place Sukkot. Jacob went to Shechem and bought some land with 100 pieces of money. So that's where we're at this point. So chapter 34, Dinah is defiled by Shechem. Now Dinah, Leah's daughter, whom she bore for Jacob, went out to look at the daughters of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her and raped her. But his soul clung to Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and he loved the young woman and spoke reassuringly to the young woman. So Shechem said to his father Hamor, saying, Get me this girl for a wife. Now Jacob had heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah while his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept quiet until they came in. Meanwhile, Shechem's father Hamor went out to Jacob in order to speak with him. Jacob's sons had already come in the field when they heard, and the men were deeply grieved and furious because he had committed a vile deed in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, which ought never to be done. But Hamor spoke with him, saying, My son Shechem He's very attracted to your daughter. Please give her to him for a wife. Intermarry with us. You can give your daughter to us, and you can take our daughters for yourselves. You can live with us, and the land will be open to you. Live in it, move about freely in it, and settle down in it. Shechem also said to his father and to the brothers, would that I find favor in your eyes, whatever you say to me, I'll give. Set the dowry and the presents as high as you like, and I'll give whatever you say to me, but give me the young woman as a wife. But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, as they spoke because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, we can't do this thing, give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for this is a disgrace to us. Only by this will we consent to you, if you will become like us by circumcising every male. Then we'll give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves and live with you and become one people. But if you don't listen to us and be circumcised, we'll take our daughter and leave. Now their words seemed good to Hamor, as well as Hamor's son Shechem. So the young man did not hesitate to do it, since he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was honored above everyone else to his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came into the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are enjoying a peaceful relationship with us, and they are living in the land and moving about freely in it. As for the land, look, it's spread out on both sides before us. We can take their daughters to be our wives, and we can give our daughters to them. But by this did these men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, when all our males are circumcised, and they are circumcised. Their livestock and their possessions, won't they be ours? Only let us consent to them, so they'll live with us. Now everyone who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, and every one who went out of the gate of his city. Then on the third day, while they were in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came against the city, undisturbed, and killed every male. Hamor and his son Shechem they killed with a sword. Then they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and plundered the city because they defiled their sister. They took their flocks, their cattle, their donkeys, those that were in the city, as well as those that were in the field. All their wealth, their little children, their wives, they captured and plundered, as well as everything that was in the houses. But Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you've brought trouble onto me, making me a stench among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. I am but a few men. They'll gather against me and strike me. Then I'll be destroyed, my household and I. But they said, should he treat our daughter like a prostitute? So Simeon and Levi actually went and plundered the whole entire city because of Shechem defiling Dinah, and they went in revenge for that. But Jacob was not really happy that they had done this either. So rededication at Bethel is chapter 35. Then God said to Jacob, get up, go up to Bethel and stay there, make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and to everyone who was with him, get rid of the foreign gods that are among you, cleanse yourself and change your clothes. Now let's get up and go to Bethel, so that I can make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and has been with me in the way that I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods in their hand and the rings in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak tree near Shechem. Then they journeyed, and the terror of God was on the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue Jacob's sons. Then Jacob arrived at Luz in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel. He and all the people who were there with him, he built an altar there and called the place El Beth El, because God had revealed himself to him there when he fled from the presence of his brother. Then Rebekah's nurse Deborah died and was buried below Beth El under the oak, so it was named Oak of Weeping. God appeared to Jacob again after he returned from Paddan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, your name was Jacob, no longer will your name be Jacob, for your name will be Israel. So he named him Israel. God also said to him, I am El Shaddai. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and an assembly of nations will come from you. From your loins will come forth kings. The land that I gave to Abraham and to Isaac, I give it to you. And to your seed after you, I will give the land. Then God went up from him at the place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a memorial stone in the place where he had spoken with him, a stone pillar, and he poured a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. Jacob named the place where God spoke with him Bethel, Beth-hyphen-El. And the next section of chapter 35 is Rachel's death in childbirth. Then they traveled from Bethel, and while they were still a distance from entering Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, but her labor was difficult. While she was struggling to give birth, the midwife said to her, Don't be afraid, for this is also a son for you. Now, as her soul was departing, for she died, she named him Ben-Oni, Ben hyphen Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. Then Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a memorial stone over her. It is the memorial stone over Rachel's grave to this day. That memorial grave still stands. Is Rachel's tomb in Bethlehem. Ben-Oni is the son of my sorrow or pain. That's what that means. And that was actually what Rachel had originally named him. And then Jacob, Israel, changed his name to Benjamin. Israel returns to Isaac. Then Israel journeyed on and set up his tent beyond the tower of Eder, Eder. While Israel was lying in that land, Reuben went and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard about it. Now Jacob had 12 sons. Leah's sons were Jacob's firstborn, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah were Rachel's female servants were Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's female servants, were Gad and Asher. These are Jacob's sons who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre of Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Now Isaac's days were 180 years. Then Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his peoples, old and full of days. So his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. And I'm going to pause it for now and come back with part 6.